on the cloud. Okay then, and welcome everyone to our event tonight. In this talk, we're going to hear from 3 female blockchain game changers as they share firsthand their insights fresh from the industry. And you're going to get to learn to see the role of blockchain education from the eyes of the mindful strategist, the crypto catalyst, and the inclusive educator. But before I introduce my panel that we have today, I'm Bridget Greenwood. I'm the founder of The Bigger Pie. And The Bigger Pie is designed as a network and community to be able to support the amazing women who are already pioneering in the space, to be able to help them to connect to each other, learn from each other, to be able to have role models, to give visibility to these incredible experts on panels, at events. I'm looking to be able to work and get media training and to be able to attract more women into the space. So we have with us today, we have Yip. She's a co-founder at Unit Ventures. She researches the question how to do good and do well at the same time. She's a certified mindfulness trainer, an executive coach, VC and founders advisor, and author of a leadership book called Beautiful Brains Change Tomorrow Today. Yip has worked for and in government agencies, not-for-profit organizations, investment firms, management consultants, startups, and large corporations, including family businesses. And she's got more than 15 years of experience in designing and facilitating peer-to-peer learning journeys and co-founded the incredible DLT Talents at Frankfurt School of Blockchain Center. Previously, she's been a project lead in McKinsey and holds an MBA from INSEAD, and her area of expertise is in strategic partnership building and in complex ecosystems. Welcome, Yip. We also have with us this evening, Eleanor Blanc. She's a cryptocurrency industry. She says the cryptocurrency industry is made of visionaries and ruthless moneymakers, and it's the perfect mix for a monetary revolution. And Eleanor is all in. She's thrilled to be part of an ongoing social and financial experiment and is passionate about peer-to-peer cash, voluntarism, and economic freedom. With a background in political science and public management, she could only fall in love with cryptocurrency's disruptive narrative of financial and economic freedom. Active with the crypto community in Amsterdam, she began working in the wallet mining industry at BTC.com. And she's founded Crypto Canal in 2019 to offer educational, marketing, and business development services. She's worked with industry leaders such as Luno, OKX, Shapeshift, Bitcoin.com, Cyber Capital, Edge Wallet, and Hub Security. And from across the pond, we have with us Samantha Mullett. She's a writer, blockchain consultant, and founder of The Blockhead. The Blockhead is a beginner-friendly resource for all things crypto. It was created to break through the tech jargon and help people learn about cryptocurrencies in an easy and entertaining way. Samantha has worked in technology for over 8 years and published material for startups, tech giants, nonprofits, and government agencies. And she became involved in blockchain in 2016, where she saw the need for an educational resource that lowered the barrier of entry for everyone, regardless of industry or educational background. Outside of the Blockhead, Samantha has created blockchain educational courses for Afro Valley, a free educational program running in Ethiopia, Uganda, Rwanda, and Kenya to spur in financial inclusion. She's also an active member of the She 256, a nonprofit dedicated to increasing diversity within the blockchain industry. And her areas of expertise include cryptocurrency, blockchain analysis, criminal investigations, and cryptocurrency hacks. So before we launch into my first question that I have with our panel, I'm actually going to ask, can you each take it in turns to just tell us a little bit more about what you know about blockchain and crypto, where you're dialing in from, what's your main motivation for attending today, and say in the chat, what's your professional background? But let's start the conversation and we'll leave that up just for a few moments. Yip. Tell us about your journey into the crypto and blockchain space and what keeps you excited in it.
Okay, sure. So I joined after I went to the World Economic Forum and I was trying to understand, how can we shift from shareholder capitalism to, like at World Economic Forum, one would say stakeholder capitalism. I've been a big advocate of social entrepreneurship since my early days in university. I worked with Professor Yunus to research and understand better how, we can alleviate or lift certain parts of population out of poverty using mechanisms of capitalism. And then I looked into sustainability and I realized, there needs to be some different mechanism of how to make the shift. And I've been looking for years to understand better in the startup space, in the governmental space, in the consulting and corporate space, to look for ways to have better coordination of efforts in markets, for example. And then I was at World Economic Forum and I heard these leaders from the blockchain space sharing about the technology and the economic incentives, the mechanisms behind it. I was just like, wow, this is really cool, because I've heard so many CEOs and corporations wanting to, bring sustainability, but having really no clue about how to make that happen. And then I saw these people who kind of have the capital and the technology and the intention to do it. I was like, this is where I want to be. So what is really fascinating for me is we are at the time of technology where we can actually use technology for good and helping solve some problems that we haven't been able to solve as a global population before.
And Sam, do you want to tell us what attracted you into the space and what keeps you excited?
Sure. So a couple of years ago, I was in San Francisco just working in tech, and I had heard about blockchain and Bitcoin, but I think I saw an increasing use case. I noticed that the majority of the people in the US felt a little distant from the financial sector. And, money supply continued to increase, the threat of inflation got bigger. And so all of a sudden, blockchain and Bitcoin became this really interesting alternative system. But I think what really hooked me was when I started going to meetups and lectures. I just kind of knew in my gut, like, this is going to be the future and this is going to be massive. And I think at that time, I also noticed that most people in the room looked the same. Most people were in tech, using the same language. And so I really wanted to make an educational resource that kind of spanned other backgrounds. I think I saw in order for blockchain and crypto to reach mass adoption, we would have to lower the barrier to entry. So that's what hooked me and brought me in. And I think over time, I just saw that use case grow, and I saw how blockchain can really be applied to so many different systems.
Absolutely. I'm always hugely impressed by the vision that people have had throughout the years, especially when there was really little to believe in apart from what you could see. So it's always fascinating hearing people's stories and understanding how they got into it and what they see. Eleanor, I know that you're very passionate about this. Please share your story.
Just a little bit. No, I fell in love, like my bio says, and like a bit like Sam, like through the meetup space. I went by accident to a meetup in Amsterdam and just was thrown into this world where people were telling me things and I didn't understand anything. I didn't come from the tech background. I came from a political public management background. I did at that point wanted to have an impact. Whatever I would do in my work, I wanted to make a change. That's how I was driven. And I realized that in cryptocurrencies, definitely there's so much to do. And I was just attracted by the energy and just the tech, and realizing that maybe before diving into water policies, which was actually my first love, that the problem, the economical problem, is actually the root of everything. And I thought that if I would actually start by empowering people financially, then water, electricity, and those other problems actually could maybe resolve themselves in a different way. Especially when I understood the power of having money outside of the state. That's really what just made me go all in. And I thought, okay, this is it. I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. So yeah, I've been doing this for a couple of years now. And I'm really honored to be here on this panel with Sam, with you. So just thank you for having all of us here.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Now, one of the things that you say is buying a coin is a political statement. So do you want to share more about that? And I think you can use Lebanon as a perfect example of what's happening right now, as why that might be the case.
Yeah, it kind of stuck with me. It's something that I started saying in the early days when it stuck. It has different meaning all the time. But for me, I think right now it has two meanings. One, when you're buying a cryptocurrency and using cryptocurrency, that in itself is a political statement, because you're basically using money that is not backed by legal tender. So it's not backed by the state. So that's already in itself is a statement. And then the second interpretation of that quote basically is there's so many different cryptocurrencies out there. They all have a different story, a different value proposition, different token economics, different consensus algorithm. And based on your portfolio, based on what you're buying, it's a statement in itself because you're expressing yourself through money. So whatever you're buying, whatever you're using will tell something about you as a user and can itself be understood as a political statement. So I'm not going to start listing cryptocurrencies here, but there are personas attached to different cryptocurrencies and different value system, I think. So that's why I like to say that.
Yes. And I think that's an important point that you're saying, that every time you buy something, every time you spend something, depending on what you spend, what currency you're using and what you're buying does say something about you, which is why I think that there is also the interest in privacy coins. I tend to weave privacy at some point into a conversation because for me at the moment, too many people say I'm not doing anything wrong. Why am I worried about privacy? But I think it's a much, much bigger subject matter than that. So yes, do you want to share a little bit about, I know that you're very passionate about what's happening in Lebanon and how cryptocurrencies might be able to alleviate the issues there?
Of course. I was very lucky in 2014 to be an exchange student in Lebanon. I had another phase in my life where I was very passionate about Middle East, and I thought that I would work there and I would solve conflicts, and that's what I was learning Arabic and had this whole phase. By living in Lebanon, I also realized the scarcity of water and scarcity of electricity. And right now, it's not the same monetary system that I was in 2014. And for a long time, their money was pegged to the US dollar. Since October 2019, the peg has been dropped, and it's been just a constant struggle for people in Lebanon currently to be able to gain access to their money. The value of their own currency, the Lebanese pound, has dropped more than 90% at this point. So imagine having a bank account and you've lost 90% of your value over like a year and a half or so. You don't have access to your dollars account anymore either. There's a lot of capital control. When the blast happened, sadly, last summer, it was really hard to support people on the ground. We couldn't donate any fiat. It was really hard for the fiat to actually reach them and for people to be able to then withdraw it, etc. So I've been basically teaching people in Lebanon about cryptocurrencies and about international remittances. So usually when I do a class, I always end the class by giving a little bit of cryptocurrency to just show people how easy it is actually to receive funds from abroad with bypassing the banking system, basically, and also telling them to maybe onboard local merchants for them to be able to stay and create that circular economy with cryptocurrency. So Lebanon has sadly become a prime example of when a state and the monetary system that's behind it fails and fails at people. And we're talking about hyperinflation and famine and really deep financial distraught over there. So I'm really passionate about helping Lebanon.
Yes, absolutely. And Yip, you're also passionate about looking at stakeholder value and bringing that in. What's needed for us to facilitate the shift to stakeholder capitalism, at least?
Mm-hmm. So that's a form of capitalism in which the stakeholders contribute to creating value. What I actually love much about the crypto space is when you look at it from a bird's eye view, it's kind of the shift from an internet that was basically the internet of information to the internet that is the internet of communication, where we use technology to connect with all people from all across the world. Me to my family in Vietnam, for example, at zero cost. That was not possible when I grew up as a child talking to my relatives in Vietnam, for example. Now we have the opportunity to use the internet as an internet of value. I can actually send money to relatives in Vietnam almost instantly at super low cost. It's actually not even money which is so revolutionary, but it's a way of measuring value because it goes beyond money. And that's actually the opportunity for us as a global society to define what do we find valuable? What things do we actually attach a value to? And when we look at economic models, what we can do is optimize for contribution. Contribution can be much more than profits. So just as simple things, we can optimize for the bottom line. What is the bottom line when we go beyond profits? And I think this technology, like tokenization of things or thinking about value in a different way, enables us to attach a value to things that have not been really possible to attach value to. So we make intangible things tangible, and we give them a space in our economic models to be seen and then to transfer. So this is actually the Internet of Value, the way I see it. And so when we think of cryptocurrency systems, because we have better ways to make microtransactions across the globe more cost efficient, we now have a tool to help people contribute even in very, very little ways and assign value to them. And so we can support a lot of people in ways that would not have made sense from an economic point of view because it would have been too costly. It's a bit similar to how basically Mohammed Yunus brought, for example, banking to the poor by reinventing lending. He invented micro lending and had some systems support that. And all of a sudden it became profitable for banks to do that because he had systems in place where default of loan repayments would reduce. So these kinds of things we can currently figure out with all the different systems in the markets right now. Everything is very new. So there will need to be a lot of testing before it can have mass adoption, but we are already seeing so much money flowing into the market. And it's our time actually to take action and to go from consumer mode into not only creator mode, but actually to contributor mode. So what makes me really, really passionate about it is we can create a contributor society and we can actually agree on a global world on how to measure contribution in a new way and in micro segments. So not like we don't need to rely on one size fits all solutions, but we can have different solutions for different segments and different needs.
It's really fascinating. So does that help things like the care economy? So there are many things. I mean, the pandemic has really shown that just because you're highly paid doesn't mean to say that you're bringing all this value into the world. When we've had major sports people can be some of the highest paid people in the world, but when the pandemic came, yes, they've got sports back up and running, but you know, it was the people who were driving the buses, it's the people who were serving us in the shops, etc., that were really showing up with their value. Do you think this type of technology and this shift in thinking and how we can value things will be able to sort of have an impact on how people are rewarded for what they do in a different way?
Yes, it's up for us to design how much value we want to attach to certain things, right? If it doesn't take a lot of effort and maybe a lot of cost to serve, like to attach micro values to little acts of service, for example, then why should I not do it? It should be effortless, convenient. Ultimately, we are all human beings, right? And most of us, including myself, like to have comfort. I actually can feel with myself that when something is very cumbersome, there's less of a probability that I will do it.
Yes.
So yes, we can use this technology and include like with a wise UX design to make sending, for example, a tip or something to micro acts an easy thing to do, a default thing to do without needing to go the extra mile and always relying on that I will do the extra mile. That won't help with like changing the system.
That's very true indeed. So we've understood what's brought you into the sector, all three of you, and we've heard a little bit about what you're really passionate about and how you see that we can change things today and what we could be able to change things in the future. I'm just going to go through the poll results now. I'm going to share them with us because we did ask you. So thank you very much for those of you who've let us know. And hello to everyone who's speaking in the chat as well. How much blockchain or crypto expertise have you got? So 8%, this is their first encounter. You're welcome. We're great to have you here and hopefully it won't be the last. 36% of you follow the news. 24% of you own some crypto and the third of you have been in the space for a number of years. We're dialing in from half of us are from Europe, US, Latin America is 24% and the same for Middle East, Africa and Asia. So it's great to be able to have a global reach. And the main motivation for attending today is the third of it is learning about blockchain, supporting the bigger pie and having a different perspective. It's equal across the results there. So thank you very much, everyone, for that. All three of you are incredible educators who are in this space. Samantha, how does education in the blockchain and crypto world differ from the traditional learning paths? And can you tell us a little bit more about how the blockhead fits into this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when I first got into it, like Ellie, you're going to meetups, you're going to lectures. Half the time you're just learning by osmosis and conversations around you. There was no courses at the time. There's no class you could take at a local university. I think since then we've made a lot of headway. There are a lot of like online certifications. There are a lot of online programs you can go to. Now there are several books you can read and documentaries you can watch. However, I think this space just moves so quickly. Like blockchain and crypto changes by the day. I think in the last week, the news about Doge and Elon Musk throwing a wrench into Bitcoin, like these things, the space moves so quickly. And I believe there was a quote recently that it's like riding a bicycle as you're inventing it. And so I think education in crypto and blockchain, it's ever evolving. So it's actually like a constant educational learning path rather than, hey, I'm going to go read this book or take this course and then know everything. It's fast moving and you either are in the stream and keeping up with it or you're falling behind. So I think for me, people learn in all different ways. Some people are visual, some people are audio. I think for me, I always saw humor as like the great equalizer. And so I really wanted to create a resource that, again, broke through that tech jargon. I saw so many people get intimidated and frightened by crypto in the early days, especially when it was a little bit less familiar and mainstream. So I wanted to break that down. I wanted to add humor so it's a little bit easier to absorb. Like, this doesn't need to be like dull academic material. Like Dogecoin is a thing. It's based on a meme. I think it's important to infuse life and fun into it. So I think that's where the blockhead comes in. I use memes, I use GIFs, I use things to break it up and make it a little bit easier to sink in. And then I think doing panels like this, the educational program I did with Afro Valley was huge. Being able to incorporate videos and other different resources within that, infographics. So I think embracing like a long-term learning path and then also making sure you have varied media sources throughout that really helps.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've definitely learned as I've got older, that our learning journeys are continuous. And the more that technology comes into our lives, the faster we are changing and the more important it is for us to continuously learn. The idea that the generation above me was able to go to be educated for a job that would keep them educated in that job pretty much for the 40 years that they were working seems incredulous, because now you can go to university and you can be halfway through your career, and jobs that weren't even around then are now sort of major jobs. That was really interesting as well. I think when we were chatting before, didn't you both say that you were both attracted to this industry because it was so exciting, because you got bored with the other tech sectors? Yeah. So continual learning. But when it's so exciting, when you're literally looking at different ways that you can change the world, how can you not be motivated to learn, right?
Exactly.
So Eleanor, what's missing in the crypto education market today and how are you filling it?
Great question. I guess I wanted more content that was a bit more down to earth and that was focused on beginners. Because I think there's so much content out there that's for traders and very focused on the price. And I wanted to bring it back to the fundamentals and maybe bring it also back to the philosophy of what cryptocurrencies are. So I think that's what maybe sets me a bit apart from other classes. I love what Sam just said about humor. I think with memes and GIFs and emojis, we can express so much today. And I try as much as I can in the Telegram group. So I started with offering these classes for specific countries. So Lebanon was like a big focus of mine. And then other people reached out and I did one for Vietnam and I did one for Italy. And Yip saw me also in that journey and she saw me hosting these different events for these different countries weekly, which was not a good plan. And now what I've done basically is concentrate all of that material and offer it every last Wednesday of the month for free for anyone. So that sort of allowed me to just sort of have a home base for anybody that's like starting and has never heard about crypto. And I feel like with that class, you have like a little bit of everything. I'm not saying you'll learn everything. You can't. It's just 1 hour to just open your mind a little bit to the space. But I've been loving teaching that class. It's been wonderful. So that's where I've been focusing a lot of my energy and learning a lot as well from the people that are joining, because every month it's a different crowd, it's different questions, which forces me as well. You learn from your students, right? It's a very positive circle that I'm having right now. But education, basically in crypto, like Sam said as well, when we started, there was no place to learn all these things. And still today, I love what you said, Sam, as well, about the learning by osmosis, or maybe learning by your peers. You can, of course, spend 300 hours online. Good luck. It's fun. It's a fantastic rabbit hole. But I feel like if you join one of us or one of our courses, you will just speed the process a bit. We might be able to sift a bit the information for you. So I feel like you can easily get overwhelmed, not only with new words, new semantics, new terms, but also making sure, like, why would you need crypto? You know, what is important for you as an individual? Because it's not the same for everyone.
That is very true. I think for those of us who live in a system where the system works for us, it is more of a question of, oh, this is interesting. Why do we need it? I remember Andrew Antonopoulos saying, why do we need this? When can we have it? Depending on who you are and where you've been, you might even be in a developed country, but you're born with the wrong name. And so you're still being excluded from being able to be given even the first rung of, here's my ability to have financial empowerment. And without financial empowerment, then things like water and electricity and things that we take for granted become big issues. And peer-to-peer learning is amazing as well, when you have the opportunity to learn from someone who's educated and with those around you. I always find that really fascinating. Yep, you have peer-to-peer learning experience, and there's the DLT talent program, which is hugely popular, but also you've designed a course with Unit Masters. Can you tell us more about that, what that looks like, who it's for, how it's delivered?
Of course. Just wanted to follow up on what Ellie just said. I actually love your energy, Eleanor. It's just amazing, very contagious. I want to build on saying empowerment is like such a powerful gift, right? And at the same time, I think before we can actually tap into our real power, we need something I call literacy, like just the capacity to have a conversation, to give names to certain concepts so that we can actually tap into the power of the wisdom of the crowds, for example. Because if I'm not able to express and relate to another person, then basically this crowd intelligence won't really work out. And so the way I've designed courses is, how can we actually, from a bird's eye perspective, look at an ecosystem and navigate, have very simple ways to look. It's like a map, to look where can I find and understand the basic vocabulary so that I can speak a level just in basic terms, so that whenever I want to learn more about a certain topic, I know where to look and how to dive deeper. I kind of have a brief understanding of where this concept was developed, what were the principles of it. Because I think principles are not separate in itself, right? The people who wrote the principles, they had a journey that they came from. They had a certain worldview that was shaped by the environment in which they grew up in. So basically, it takes a little bit of understanding and contextualization to be able to really understand the ecosystem. So the way, for example, Unit Masters is designed is we have 6 weeks, and then each week has a different theme, where you basically just look at a map of the ecosystem and understand what is the role of exchanges, what is the role of consensus mechanisms, security, and who are the players, what is actually their incentive to participate in the system. Because if you understand what might make people participate in the system, you kind of understand how to play the game, and how to not even play the game, how to actually change the rules of the game if you were up to changing them because you don't like the way they are or because they have certain inefficiencies. So we have weekly sessions. Both Bridget and Eleanor have already been speakers. So we have live mentoring sessions every Tuesday and Thursdays with people who've been in the field. And what we ask them is just to share their experience about how they got into the field, their passion, so that we can understand what makes them think that this industry is so powerful or so important to our everyday life. And then we have coaching sessions. So every Wednesday, there's a person who will answer your questions and discuss assignments that are done every week. And then there's peer learning in the sense of we invite participants to connect in study groups to do certain assignments together and check in on each other so that they can go through a 6 week journey all together and grow a little community. And we're launching Unit Masters Cohort 4 next week, next Sunday, and you can all join in case you still want to join. But I also really highly recommend Ellie's class, for example, because I've participated myself and learned quite a lot.
Yes, well, all three of you, as I say, are amazing educators. Could you each put the resources so people who are listening in and particularly on the replay can actually go and find out where they can learn more about blockheads and Crypto Canal and the Unit Master courses? Samantha, what's the end game for cryptocurrency? How do you see this going into mass adoption? Bitcoin has been around as inception since 2009, 2010. We're now at the stage where I've seen one of the questions is Bitcoin is for everyone, why does it cost so much effectively? But we couldn't say that we've got mass adoption yet.
No, and I think we're definitely far from it. And I think it's going to be a long journey to get there. I think we're still very early. Bitcoin is still in its infancy. I know it passed like the 1 trillion market cap, but gold is 10 trillion, and we definitely have a long way to go. I think the point in the chat about gas fees is definitely real. We're still learning, we're still improving, we're still making upgrades. I think Ethereum has a lot of promise, but again, it's like we have to see how it grows. We didn't see the momentum of DeFi pick up until just last year. Even though Bitcoin's been around since 2008, it's still young compared to currencies in general. I think in terms of the end game question, what does that journey to mass adoption look like? I think people will slowly see the benefit of a store of value, especially if their home country's fiat currency is even more volatile than Bitcoin, or if they see massive inflation and then they all of a sudden have an alternative store of value. I always think about it like, okay, how did my grandmother get into Bitcoin or crypto? Would she ever get there? I think it would start as a store of value. And then I think whether it's that or something else would become more of a medium of exchange. I think the more companies that include a very easy UI and user experience for people, the easier it'll be to actually start transacting in crypto and moving those store of funds into kind of our everyday transactions. So I think it'll be a slow process, but starting with the store of value, moving to medium of exchange. And then I think just like the psychological adoption of what is a token? How can we use a token? We live in a completely global, fast-moving society these days. The internet has basically democratized communication and information. And we can see since the beginning of the internet where we are today. We can call a ride share on our phone and be across town in 20 minutes. We can book a plane ride halfway across the world and leave tomorrow. Like, it's insane how quickly it's moved and how powerfully it's affected our lives. So I think with cryptocurrency, it will follow that suit. Like, it will take time for us to slowly get there. It'll take time for it to weave itself into our everyday lives. But I think before we know it, we will be transacting in different cryptocurrencies and swapping them around like it's no big deal. Like we're calling an Uber or booking a flight to Europe or the US.
Yes, indeed. It's when we're not talking and explaining about what it is, but we're just using it. I have no idea how the internet works. It is magic.
Exactly.
I don't need to be explained how it all works for me to get on and for me to be able to converse with whomever I want, wherever I want, however I want, at a price I can afford. So very much looking forward to so many of the projects that I see out there in the space, looking at what problem. We have plenty of problems in the world, right? We've got more problems than we know what to do with. And I personally feel that the current economic systems and drivers of value that we have helped us to get where we are. And therefore, we need to be able to have different ones to be able to move us away from where we are into a more sustainable future. And I love all the projects that are looking at how they can work on that. I know often people complain about the energy, the cost for Bitcoin, that it's wasted energy. Of course, one, it's not wasted energy because it's the security of the Bitcoin system that is being used by this proof of work, this energy consumption. And without the security of the network, it would be valueless. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is, of course, is a lot of green energy being used, but it doesn't stop the fact that a lot of energy is used. So it's really fascinating seeing other protocols coming through saying, how can we have security, but without necessarily having to use so much energy? Eleanor, where do you see the next 5 years?
Well, I saw the last 3. And I can't even believe how fast we've grown. In 2017, it was a bit weird to be like that crazy person that would say, one day the government will fail. It's a bit of a dramatic narrative to walk around the street and you're scaring people, right? And sadly, with what happened in 2020, and when we see how interconnected our economies are, by seeing how dependent we are from certain supply chains, by seeing how your local economy is crucial to your well-being and for you to have access to certain products. In 5 years, I can only see it being accelerated, sadly, by the crisis that we're going through now, which is making us so much more acutely aware of the limits as well of our current economies. And just to be aware that 40% of the dollar supply has been printed last year. The Fed has been printing like there's no tomorrow, basically. This is not a free system, right? You can't just print. You can't just press on a button and expect no consequences or negative externalities to such stimulus packages and QE measures. I think post-pandemic days, we're going to see a wonderful, like the roaring 20s. So I can see like everybody getting out and going crazy. And then we might have to deal with the consequences of everything that we're going through right now. And financially and economically, I just hope that people walking around with smartphones realize the power that they have, that they can be connected now to this new internet magic money. That is also more than money, right? But I think in 5 years, the literacy, and there's going to be more people using it. Like Sam mentioned, better infrastructure, so better UI, UX, just more avenues for people to easily go from fiat to crypto, more merchants adopting. So I'm pretty bullish. I'm pretty positive, and I think we're just in the beginnings. And we see like these hypes of tech right now. We're like in sort of a NFT phase right now. We had in 2017 the ICO boom. Like we go through all these like moments and phases and fashion moments in crypto, let's say. But we're just testing. This is all just ongoing social experiment going on with some commentators like we and educators like we are here. But we need so much more talent. It needs to be more than the devs out there. We need all the business developers, the content creators. Oh, and something I really want to see as well is like you mentioned Uber before, that it's just so easy that you can just call your Uber. I can't wait for it to not be an Uber anymore and for me to tip my driver directly, to not have these intermediaries that are taking so much out of their pocket. I mean, it's a great product. I'm a user today, but I would love to just be able to just tip my driver directly. That's the peer-to-peer economy that I'm seeing coming up. Why not with crypto? Let's do it.
Yes, I mean, I think it's a very valid point. Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency. What problem was it trying to address? The fact that we had in 2008 a man-made global financial crisis. So it was clear that the current model is flawed. So we need to find alternatives for that. And Bitcoin, being open source, has allowed so many other people to look at that technology and turn around and say, okay, well, Bitcoin was looking to solve the problem this way. I feel as though it's flawed, and here's my attempt at doing it. So there are various cryptocurrencies that are looking to solve a currency issue. And then, of course, so many other projects that are looking to solve other issues that we've got.
Yeah, and Bitcoin is, like you said, the first mover. But I also love my Nokia. My 3210 was a great phone, but I'm not using that today. It was a great phone and I loved it. But like for crypto, thank God we can like improve, and it's an open source world. So people, if they see a good product and a good idea and a good piece of code, they take it. They make something better. So we're really still in that phase where forking and being able to test different models, and just Ethereum, which is a better phone with like at least a camera on it, has like smart contracts and like dropped the UTXO model. But it's the beauty of the space, the diversity that there is, and that it's still moving, and we're still not done with testing, basically.
Definitely no. When Keith Bates was on 2 weeks ago, he was talking about how the software industry, sort of Facebook's famous quote is move fast and break it. that sort of culture and what we're building has its pitfalls. So when we're
Yeah.
seeing all of these hacks, I think you need to be careful about what you're moving fast on and what could be broken.
You don't want a blockchain that breaks. You want it immutable and transparent and there forever. But you can change the social contract for others. But
yeah, exactly. I mean, Bitcoin can't break, and that's why it doesn't move so quickly. That's why it's trying not to be all the bells and the whistles, because they need to get the fundamental things right. And they know that changing it is very difficult and a slow process. So, Yip, I know that you've shared with me a few times about your vision for the future, and we've touched on it a little bit more here. But do you want to paint a picture, maybe tell a story? It could be imaginary or not, of what you see this technology bringing.
You know, Bridget, I was thinking maybe we can do a little experiment all together with all the participants in the room. Can we get like 2 minutes of visualization exercise
100%.
for everybody to join into this? And of course, I'm happy to share my own 2030 picture. So this is just an invitation for you guys to lean back, find a comfortable position. And then if you want, you can close your eyes. We're going to just tap into our immediate intuition.
Okay.
So bear with me, it takes just a few minutes. So if you want to close your eyes, that's fine. If not, just find a relaxed gaze. And then sense into your 2 feet and 2 feet on the floor and just feel how they connect to the ground. And then you guide your attention towards your breathing and see how your spine moves along with your in-breath and your out-breath. Pay attention to your belly and see how it moves when you breathe in and how it moves when you breathe out. Relax your shoulders. Do a quick scan of your face and see if you have any tension. And then focus on the chest area and connect with your heartbeat. If you like, you can put the 2 palms together and feel the warmth of your fingertips and the ridges in your fingertips as the hands press together tenderly. Listen to your heart and then put yourself into 2030 and you wake up in the morning. You had a very good night's sleep and you feel good. And then you open your eyes and look around. What are you seeing? Wherever you are. And who are you with in that very moment? And then you just reflect on the really cool things that happened in 2030 so far. Like, what are really good news? And then you think about the past 5 years. What were the major developments that have happened that made you feel very happy and that made you feel very safe and connected to your beloved ones? And then you think of how you got there. What has actually changed in this world compared to 2021, when there was this thing called blockchain or Internet of Value? What has actually really changed within the past 10 years for you? And now listen to your heart again and ask yourself, what was my contribution to the shift? What were my actions? And how did I contribute? You just take a mental note of whatever comes up and then bring a sense of kindness and joy to you being here in the present moment and imagining your future, knowing that you can have empowerment to take action. Sense into your 2 feet again, wiggle your toes, and then you can come back and open your eyes. And then you can maybe share in the chat whatever came up. If you like, I can share what I think, how my world looks like in 2030.
Very cool.
I just want to hear. And also, Eleanor or Sam or Bridget, do you share?
Let's hear from you first, Yip, and then I'll happily share from me as well.
Okay. I'm just seeing if something is coming up from the audience. So in 2030, I think I'm waking up in a world where I feel happy because I can choose where I'm working and how I'm spending my day. There's no 9 to 5 job commitments, but I'm managing my day according to energy and flow. I'm living in a world where it's quite normal for people to engage with technology, for women alike and for men, and where there's actually an understanding that taking well-being for others in society, like the care work you mentioned before, is as valuable to the well-being of like society as any role working in tech or in finance, so that everybody can actually get paid for and make a living of what they care most about. And if that's about like taking care of beloved ones, then so be it, because everybody else knows that if we don't do these things, we don't feel good in society. And we got there, in my view, when I look at my own vision for 2030, because as a global society, we used wisdom and insight. We looked at what was meaningful to us and prioritized how we want to spend our 24 hours of the day and work together to figure out like the problem we want to solve in our little groups, in our little networks, and work together with other networks to create the change and to contribute towards creating the world we want to live in.
That's amazing.
Somebody said they were not on this planet.
No, I like that. I woke up in a home that clearly wasn't in the UK. I was in a much more pleasant climate. There was a lot of nature around, and I had the sense of freedom that when I was making any consumer choices, that I was able to do so in a way that I knew that I was buying without damaging the planet, and making sure that the people in the supply chain had been rewarded fairly for what they were doing. And as a result, we were filled with a world of abundance, but not with a world of greed. And that's making me cry. And the part that I had played was what I'm looking to do with the bigger pie, which is to make sure that I can facilitate and support the amazing game changers that we have to be able to go off and to create these incredible futures for us. Somebody else has to speak now because I am going to cry. This is why I'm excited about the technology, because this is what I think that we can do. We can solve the problems that we're currently in, and we can imagine a future. And by collaborating and working together, and the technology allows us to do that, as you said, the peer-to-peer, the permissionless aspect of being able to do and to do good. Now, with that means the permissionless aspect to be a bad actor as well. So it's not a perfect society by any measure, and there'll be lots of challenges that we'll have to face and come along with. But thank you very much for that exercise here. I was going to ask each of you to share how people can get involved with cryptocurrencies and blockchain space. But to be honest with you, I think that we should go to the questions and how you can get involved. I mean, obviously, you all have your educational spaces. It's something that we can put in the email. So rather than using the time to be able to share that part of the journey today, let's go through the questions. I know, Eleanor, you saw that Chandan has asked a couple of questions that he'd love you to answer. Do you want to kick off with those?
Yeah, of course. I'm still dreaming of me in 10 years. I also need some time to come down. Yep, that was so surprising and beautiful. What a beautiful exercise. And thank you, both of you, for sharing your future. I did see myself with kids jumping in a bed. So that's where I went. I just dropped crypto for a moment and I went all family. So let me go back to crypto. I saw a great question earlier indeed by Chandran. Let me just scroll back. The question I'm going to answer. So what would happen to people possessing crypto in countries where governments might ban it? Now, isn't it more a problem for them? So exactly for that reason. It's difficult right now. And I would say that governments and regulations do fluctuate. governments are a bit undecided on what to do with it. On some level, they realize it threatens their system. They want us to all continue to use fiat so they can trace what we're buying and spending, and they want the central banks to stay relevant. If we're all like on another spreadsheet, then what are they doing? So at the same time, I feel like in those countries where there is so much financial grasp, or where the government has so much power on your finances, it would make me want to crawl out of my skin and find alternatives as fast as possible. What I might do in that situation would be to focus on privacy coins, focus on making sure that I'm as anonymous as possible, buy peer-to-peer, don't KYC yourself on centralized exchanges, make sure that you always own your private keys, make sure that you're using products basically that are designed in the true spirits of the cypherpunks to give you full privacy and control over your digital assets. That's my 2 cents on governments and crypto. And then there's a second question. If crypto or Bitcoin was made for everyone and bypassed the central banking system and fiat currency, how come it has become money for the rich and not actually available for everyone? Great question. I think today, anybody that's transacting and using cryptocurrencies might feel the burn when they realize that they need to pay fees, right? Whether it is miners for the Bitcoin network or gas fees for the Ethereum blockchain. There's a cost to using these blockchains. They're like very fancy clubs right now, and the bouncers, miners, validators asking for crazy entrance money basically for you to use these systems. And it's one of the reasons why I usually give Bitcoin Cash to people during my classes, because it remains very cheap to send, like a fraction of a cent. It is still a UTXO-based blockchain, meaning that you still can obfuscate and use mixers for your transaction, and you still can use HD wallets, etc. So yeah, it's not cool. The situation right now is just not optimal. Let's just put it that way. We're in like a space where it's 99% speculation, 1% values and use cases. So I want to tip that balance. So let's see, like in 2030, if it can be more crypto for all and not just crypto for a few.
True, but then you don't have to own a whole Bitcoin, right? This idea of
also
having one unit, the value's gone up, so I need less of a Bitcoin to be able to hold £100 if $100, if it was $100 at one, but I can still hold $100 worth of Bitcoin. So there is that element to it. And that was part of the design, right? That you could go down to the small Satoshis. Thank you, everyone. Do keep sharing your visions for 2030. We'll have a chance to have a look at those. And now, because everyone's sharing everything, which is wonderful, I'm kind of losing sight of where the questions are. So question 1 and question 2 was answered. Bettina, are you still here? Do you want to ask your question? In your teachings, are you informing students? Did you want to come on and ask that question?
No, my question was in regards to if your course, are you informing them of decentralized exchanges? I think you answered my question a bit, Eleanor. But how are you doing that in Lebanon too? Because I'm wondering, and because there are decentralized exchanges that does not require KYC, but there is a major learning curve, like the BISC, and then the running of the node. That's another thing. So how does that work for those who are in places that may have trouble obtaining some of the cold storage? Raspberry Pi. I mean, they could break a couple of computers and create their own, but I'm just trying to understand how you're able to go around some of the issues, because those are what really will help, really provide, I guess, what the woman was saying in regards to the fee situation. How do you get around the system? In regards to also ensuring that if the government bans some of the exchanges, you have these alternatives.
Yeah, great question. I think you've touched on so many technical aspects. On the Crypto 101, I don't tell people to run their own nodes. I think that the decentralization of the network is great for those that are ready to run a node. I'll talk about it more like in my crypto deep dive, like in like the more advanced classes. For the beginners, and how I do it is that I really insist on not your keys, not your crypto. So when I onboard these people, I give them a non-custodian wallet. And I've checked with Edge and I was asking them, what happens if the Apple Store or Google Store bans you? What happens then? And he was like, well, people can still run an SDK. They can still run it directly and run it directly on desktop. So it's a wallet that allows people to have privacy. It's an HD wallet. So I mentioned it before, meaning that every time you receive a transaction, your public address changes. So I think that's great. I don't want people to just have one public address. I mean, that's a problem with Ethereum, which is not a GXO model, but to have their private keys. I don't let them get out of the class without them knowing where in the app to swipe and click and write them down. And this is a paper wallet. And, to write those words down, to ideally make sure that you keep those words like in a safe place, make copies, think about it. Imagine yourself in 2030 finding that piece of paper. Don't put it on a Post-it somewhere weird, like just think long-term about these things. I don't want another I'm looking for my computer hard drive and there's so many horrible stories like this. So basically beginners is all about private keys and ownership. And then the next step would be where to buy peer-to-peer on a decentralized exchange, etc. The node situation, running your own node, I keep that for much later. But it's important.
Yeah, so Edge is an actual good app, so that's perfect.
Oh, I'm glad I have a promotional link. Go check it out. No, but yes, they're great. Edge is, I personally use them, and I like the fact that they have zero data on you. That's also really important. So zero data on you, you have full ownership. It runs even though if they get banned or something weird, because these governments, they shut down WhatsApp and Telegram on a whim. So you also have to think about these stores, these closed gardens where you're telling people to go. That's how I do it.
It's a very good point. We are past the hour now. I would love to hear just one last thing from Yip and Samantha. And then Eleanor, do you still wish to offer a bonus session for those who would like? So we're going to hear from Yip and Sam, and then I'll tell you about a little bonus afterwards. Final words from you.
No, really, now is the time to shape the economy and shape society, because we are in such early stage of the industry. And if you all speak up and try to understand it, there's not too much to learn because it's so nascent, the industry, then you can really have a big impact on how we're designing it for the years to come and for future generations to come. If we believe technology is here to stay, then let's shape it.
And I guess literacy is part of that. And that's exactly what you're offering through the Unit Passes course. And Sam, final words from you?
Yeah, I think it's really easy to get overwhelmed by this space, even when you're in it. So I would say just remember how early it is and how much incredible power you have as an early player. I think all of us on this Zoom, whether you're a participant or a speaker, when I had that 2030 vision, I was like, wow, 2021 seems like so long ago, but everything we're doing now, we're really planting the seeds for massive, massive growth. So definitely acknowledge the power that you have now, the resources that are out there. I think, again, keeping up on things, even if it's in a light touch way. The Blockhead has a weekly newsletter. I'd recommend signing up for that. It's a quick read every week that just details, hey, what's happening? And I think by having that pulse on the industry, it makes it really easy to absorb the changes that happen. So yeah, thank you for having me too. I think this is such a fun panel, amazing meditation walkthrough. Super happy to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to stop recording now.